what is the state? I woke up at 4:44. It takes like 2 minutes since we can't play the intro right now.
Okay, no problem.
Let me see. Yeah, this is the same thing, but F it. Yeah, I woke up at 4:44 yesterday, and then Morgan came out at 5:50, 5:55 or something like that. Then we laid in bed for an hour, and we got up at 7. And then today, I got up in the middle of the night. I don't know what time it was. But the reason I'm telling you this is because I went back to bed at 10 and woke up at 12 at 11:40. And I'm grumpy. I'm grumpy. Capital A, capital F. No, I'm really not. I'm not a grumpy person. But I did have this story on my mind, and you're the perfect person to share it with. So, in the final months of when I was on the streets, I was now working at this bar and grill, and I was staying with a friend most of the time, sleeping on his couch. He's like my best homeboy ever, you know. He's just a great guy. Anyway, he's very much a character. He's a very unique character. He's very much comfortable in his own skin, and he's just a cool guy. So we would go to this bar, and this bar was shaped like let's see, it would be like a big square, right? You know, with the backside the bar, right? So it'd be like this, that. So what's that? Whatever that is. Okay. Well, he would sit in the middle of the square every day. Every night we go, he'd just sit there, right? And he was like a fixture at this place. It was called the Q Bar. The Q Bar. And so he was a fixture there. Everybody knew him. So this one time we were there, and you know me, my friend's very stoic, and he just sits there and he drinks his beer and shoots his tequila, and people come by and they talk, and he says hello, and that's about it. And so you know me, I'm always cutting up and I'm messing around. He'd even tell me, "Get the F away from me, man. Just leave me alone. I just want to chill." So this guy walks up to him, and the guy's like, "Hey," he approached him like he was a star, you know. And he looked at him. He's like, "Hey, man, hey, are you Donnie, man?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Oh, dude, man, I just want to tell you, you know, you're just like, you know, the coolest dude. And I just wanted to come over." He's like, "Dude." He's like, "Yes." And he says, "I don't like people. Leave me alone." And I never understood that. I was like, that's kind of harsh, man. Donnie, that's kind of harsh. But I get it. It's not that he doesn't like people. He doesn't do people well because he's a very high frequency guy. You know? He doesn't
is this your lame story for having poor human skills and social skills? Is this what you're working up to?
Yeah. That's it. I have poor human skills. I do. I have poor social skills. My tolerance is like gone to the gut.
Yeah. It's so funny because, well, I guess we could. Hello, everyone. It's Huong and Todd Medina. Today we are going to shoot the shit because Todd actually has gone through hell and back. And if you've been following Todd and Morgan for the last, I would say 2.5 weeks, you've been sharing fragments of your Texas story. Yeah. But what I'd love to do this morning is have you share the entirety of the story because as a bystander, it was very entertaining following you guys.
Was it? And it was sparingly. We weren't like sharing it. I guess I was sharing it on shows. But
but it was fragmented, right? Because it was fragmented because you would, out of respect of the guests, you would share parts of it and not hog the entire hour for yourself. But that's totally okay because I don't have anything significant to share anyways. I just actually wanted to dissect. Well,
I just noticed that the last I just noticed that the last time that we messaged was after a show. I don't mention dragons much because they haven't been coming around, but I did have the Scented come with this yellow dragon, and then you sent me a note said you got it and you were gonna puke. Like you got it, like
Yeah,
You know?
yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
yeah, let's turn the tables here, man. Thank God
Sure.
you're on.
So, yeah, so you haven't had a chance to tell your experience, which I think is very collective driven. And I think it's a good opportunity to kind of go through the entirety of it instead of sharing it in fragments. And then debate about a little bit that's happening. Because from this side of the seat, obviously, I had power, I had Wi-Fi. I was very comfortable laughing at your expense. So but it didn't surprise me that you two landed right in the eye of the storm, which was quite significant in terms of
Yeah.
synchronicities for sure. So,
Yeah.
so why don't you start off with why was there a trip to is it
Well,
Texas? I can't even
yeah.
remember the.
So yeah, Texas, South Texas. What's my hometown?
Mhm.
Corpus Christi, Texas. It means the body of Christ, and I was born there. So, well, it started because we went through the early stages of winter. Everybody knows that December was an MF, especially from 12/12 to whatever. And it really was still running, right? So we were feeling something because we hadn't moved around a lot lately. And so I'm like, oh, we're gonna about to move, you know. And so the interesting thing was our friend sent us a note, said, how would you like to go to Sedona and stay in my condo for like a month, February? And I'm like, oh, that's it, you know, we're going to Sedona. So I went over to Cinderella because I report to her. And I said, hey, we're going to Sedona. It's all lining up. And she said, okay, let me sit with it. So she basically, she never got it. She just said, I'm not feeling it. So I'm like, I trust her intuition better than mine. So I was like, okay. So then we got an offer to go to Montana and live in the middle of nowhere in the winter. And like, so we're both like, oh no, I don't think so. Then we get an offer to go to Florida, where we went last year by our beloved sister, and she's like gung ho, we're going. And I said, you know what? I'm not feeling it. So then this friend who lives in Corpus Christi, who I've been talking to off and on, and she offered us the top of her house in Corpus Christi. Now, I never thought I'd be going to Corpus Christi. That's where my family's from. They don't like me. and and Morgan had no interest in even going to Texas unless we're going to see my kids or something like that. But so we ended up going down there, and it was actually a very beautiful trip. I'll just say that, in regard to the family and everything. But it was very important. And on the way down, as we're going through Texas, it was like it was a 10.5 hour total drive. The first 7 hours we had to stop in Austin, and it was pretty late at night, like 10 o'clock when we got there. But we could feel something was happening, right? So we got up the next day. We drove over there. We went to our friends. We hung out. The sun's out. She has a heated, saltwater swimming pool on the canal. We're on an island, and and it was kind of cool. We had like this kind of a ritual thing occurred, and it was cool. But that kind of stuff happens with Morgan and I. There's always code exchange with people. And then the next day, and I should say this is after Morgan and I met my son and his beautiful fiance for dinner. I'd never met her, and I hadn't seen my son in 3 years. My oldest son, Dante. So it was really cool because we're at this place and we're looking at a picture of Todd and Morgan. We're looking at a junior Torgan. There's no kidding. Like this, the characteristics of the relationship are almost exact. And Morgan and I are
Yeah.
just like, oh my God, right? So we're leaving, and word had been put out, pretty much had been put out, like Todd's in town, and it was just like like silence, like dead silence, like nobody said anything except my cousin. So we're coming out of the restaurant, and my son has this app, and he says, "Hey, I know where Grandpa is, my dad," and because my father lives like a 10-minute walk from where we were staying. It's not a big island, and he was like across the street from where we were eating. So he pulls out this app where I guess you can tell people where you're at, and he's at the bar next door. So we walked in there, and it was beautiful. You know, we just walked up to him and I hugged him, and he met Morgan, and you know, we just had a great time. You know, we took a picture of that night. I put it up. So anyway, fast forward, we go swimming in the heated salted pool, and the
So
next day we
what's the temperature? Because we need to highlight and
the
punctuate
temperature is probably about 80, but
okay.
nice and warm. Now the temperature in the pool was 100. So if it was cool out, it didn't matter, right? If you've ever been in a saltwater pool, it's like you come out, you don't have to take a shower. It's just like it comes right off you. But so yeah, that all happened. The next day we get up, and I could already feel something like the first day we were there. We stayed with her about 6 days, I think. And but I mean, there wasn't anything personal. It was just stuff. We were doing shows from there. People watched it, and everything was cool. But anyway, after 5 days or so, we woke up the next day, and there was no power. No power. And we were okay, you know. And then some things happened. I can't go into too much detail in regard to some of the personal stuff. It's not in our respect, but in other people's. But anyway, so essentially, we got the hell out of Dodge. So there's an island. It's a barrier island to the mainland, right? And so we to get off the island, you would normally just go over this bridge, and we'd be in my hometown in the Corpus Christi proper in 20 minutes or less, really, like 10 minutes. But because of the storm, because now the temperature is, I believe, around, I want to say it was around, it wasn't like it was in other places, but it was 22 degrees, something like that. And so we had to go over this ferry and go all the way around the inland, uh, in off major highways, off this, you know, and it took us 3.5 hours. So our friend had gotten us for one night a place at the Marriott Courtyard. And so we ended up going over there. And so we're checking in, and it's like 10 o'clock at night. And I hear somebody go, you know when the water's going to be turned back on? And I'm like, excuse me? And, you know, I'm never funny about bathroom stuff. So, like, how am I going to do this, right?
Yeah.
Like, I met this guy, he was in a hurricane on his honeymoon with his wife, and a hurricane came, and they were in Mexico, and they lost all the water. And they couldn't flush the toilet, and they couldn't leave their room. And him and his wife started their marriage off in a very rocky way, and I don't think that they liked it. But so anyway, so we had no water, and so you know, we accepted that. We had internet, and the hotel had power, and we were in my old neighborhood. I had an office right next door in the old days. I lived around the corner. I grew up around the. It was all the same area that I was at. My family, few family members are there, lived in that area, and so we had no power. And I mean, we had no water for 4 days, and we did real good with it. We had one morning, no, we had one, it's like the second or third night, I re-upped. And for those of you who had PayPal, we had just enough to cover, like, I think it was 4 nights. And we said, fuck it, we're doing it. You couldn't get a room anywhere. It was a disaster, and we just had to go for it. You know, we couldn't really go stay with anybody, so we had to transfer what little we had, like $500 from Morgan to me, to our Soulogy thing. And so, come to find out that when I go to pay for it, which was $590, and I had like 112, right? They declined it. And the reason they declined it is because if you move a large amount of money over and then immediately try to charge it, they'll decline it. So I get on the phone. Todd has come a long way. I'm in the middle of the afternoon. We've had this big to do. They saved us this room. Morgan's over at the room with all the luggage sitting in front of the door, you know. And I just said, okay, excuse me, I'm going to call PayPal. So I did. So I got him on the phone. And I hadn't dealt with a matrix like that in a long time, and I lost my shift. And
really? Not you.
Yeah, and the lady came out, sir, can you please go to? It's like, sir, can you please go to your room? Can you please go to your room? Because I mean, I'm like on these people, like I'm totally shocked. I mean, like, and by the end of it, they're telling me, well, if you don't like it, you can contact our legal department. And I'm like, F you, you know. And it worked out okay because then I had this novel after we got everything loaded into the car. Now it's freezing. We don't have anywhere to go. We don't even know if we can use our car. This is the only lifeline we have financially, period. And we sit in the car. I believe Morgan had about a 7 minute. She actually did great. She doesn't. She hadn't always done great when we travel because she had some stuff going on when she was young. I'm very used to it, but she's really come a long way. And this was really intense conditions, and I think she didn't even snap. She just kind of was really edgy. Me, on the other hand, I was out for blood. I looked like Rambo. I already had blood like coming out of my eyes and stuff, like my war paint. So I calmed down. I told the lady I was sorry. I went to the car. I said, somehow or another, we just came up, well, why don't we try one night? So I walked back in. I said, can I just try one night? Now the manager I've already cussed at and all this stuff. She's,
oh yes,
well,
you're just the ideal guest. They didn't write you back.
She didn't argue. She just said, yes, I understand. I said, I'm very sorry. She goes, it happens to everybody. I said, well, it doesn't happen to me. Not anymore. It used to, but not anymore. And so then she just says, yes. So we one-nighted it 3 nights in a row. And it allowed us to go get some water and some food and whatever. So that was all cool. But it was very confronting. It was because the only places you could go were these fast food restaurants, and the lines were literally like 70 and 80 cars, right? There was a lot of people scavenging, and I was scavenging, and but it was okay because everywhere we went, people were like chill. Everybody was like, just you can't make that stuff up, right? And so at the same time, before we got there, my dad's got a family of 7 children. None of them had passed up until a week ago, and none of them ever have heart attacks. I mean, these people are like, they eat like stuff they shouldn't and drink, and and they just live forever. They just, they have that kind of gene. When we got there, my uncle, who's the 3rd son and the 4th child, my dad's the oldest son. He's the 2nd child, and my dad's 84. My uncle was 80. My other uncle that was there was 82. Well, my uncle had gone into the hospital for a gallbladder outpatient procedure. Gets tested for COVID, no problem. Goes in. He's there. They're waiting. You know how when you have something done, they wait for you to pee and poop and all that, so when they can release you. Well, he was slow on the urination. They're going to do another test. Oh, now you have COVID. So now he's got COVID, which turned into pneumonia, which turned into a stroke, a heart attack, and then he transitioned while I was there in the middle of all this, right?
Oh, man.
So you have this catastrophic weather, because you're literally in a situation where 400,000 people have no water, and you're on water board, right? So it's like, and I'm thinking to myself, what would happen if this extended like a month or 2 months or 3 months? Like, where's the National Guard? Why hasn't this been declared? Why hadn't this been declared a federal emergency? Because I've been through enough hurricanes. They came in like that, right?
Yeah.
And even though the roads were shut down all through Texas and stuff, I still didn't see anything. I still haven't seen anything. I've been watching the paper. They had a little bit of talk about it. Talked to Franco about this, and he shared some information, which he usually doesn't share. He said it was orchestrated. Like he was told. Okay, so anyway, so that's just a sidebar issue. But the interesting thing was that I got to see relatives that lived there that I hadn't seen in over 10 years. And we're talking horror stories. We're talking Todd went to jail. We're talking Todd was homeless. Todd was crazy. Todd this, Todd started Soulogy. He's got a bandana around his head, and he's no shirt on in 2014, and he's talking all this stuff every day on Facebook and YouTube. So what ended up happening was, through my dad, I went to see my other uncle and connected with him. And he had a son who was 8 months younger than me who passed away of HIV-related stuff. We were very tight. This was a few years back. So there was just all this stuff happening. And then, because my uncle was in the hospital, his kids came down. Well, 2 of them lived there, 1 came down. So there was all this interaction. Then my other son came. And so, there was all this, and the first night we got together, we went to this restaurant that had sushi and sake. And I was really excited because my dad was there, my cousin was there, my brother-in-law was there, my other cousins were there, my son's there, and Morgan's sitting next to me, and I had a very full night. And I probably went over a little bit, and that's okay. That's what happens. But so we got together again, and at this other restaurant, and it was just amazing. It was just amazing. And then the really most amazing thing was we went back to my uncle's house where his family, his kids were staying, just to meet up. Now I got my two sons, my uncle's grandson, which is my cousin's son. They all grew up together. My cousins, one from California, really cool like you, and Morgan Lee. And the older people had gone home, and so they have a son, would have been my uncle's grandson, who's my son's age, and he's very unique. He's a starseed. He's a crystal child. So in that environment of the conservative Catholic Mexican culture, he's not normal. All right. So we're all sitting around the dining table. I'm standing up, and all of a sudden, I hear Morgan. Morgan. She's not like me, right? She's not going to just start going da 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 da, right? She's reserved, and all of a sudden she starts telling them, "Hey, you don't understand how special this kid is. He's a starseed. He's a crystal child. He's a Blu-ray." And it just started. It started, right? Her voice started shaking. She sounded like she was hoarse. Everybody was like, just tuned in. And this went on. The kids beaming. My kids start beaming. My cousin starts beaming. And Morgan's telling them the truth. He's here to do things in this family that no one else can do. And it just goes on. So I'm like, wow, this is great. So she gets up, goes outside with me. And I was talking, I don't know who I was talking to. And so the kid comes out, my two boys come out, and they're like, the kid's like, I want to come to your house. I want to come spend some time with y'all and absorb some of this. And my son's like, I want to come too. And then the kid's father, my uncle's son, my cousin comes out and goes, I want to go too, And
Yeah.
it was pretty interesting. But she did another thing too. She was like, there was another point where, and the whole point is these people who I grew up with, now this is sans the older generation, were so receptive. So A, all this stuff is going on. B, Morgan Lee is now on the offense, right? Not the offense, but the offense. I mean, she's actually putting this stuff out there, And so there was another point where they had my son cornered, who's got the girlfriend that we had dinner with, and there's two of them going, you need, you're 26 years old, you need to make sure that you have the kids before you're 30, get it out of the way. And Morgan walks right up to him and goes, well, that what you guys are doing is pushing your unconscious programming that your parents gave you onto him. And they were like, and then one of them goes, you're right, you're absolutely right. So she follows Morgan outside, and I'm outside, and the boys are outside, and my nephew's outside, and my cousin's outside. And then the next thing you know, it turns to sacred sexuality. And she starts talking about sacred sexuality. And my son and my nephew just light up. And my son is, I took a second picture, if you saw it on my Facebook wall, it's just me and my second son, Teddy. And he said, I could tell he's not gone there much because it just didn't feel right. In other words, they get it. And she explained to me later, because I was like, what in the hell happened? This is amazing. She's basically saying, well, these kids are hearing something, or they're hearing commentary that they know is accurate, because what they're looking at in their day-to-day lives, they know that's not accurate. It's not real. It doesn't work. Mm-hmm. So all that happened. And, it was a situation where, yeah, she was awesome. She was incredible. But it was a situation where there was a lot, I could just see it. I could see all of this alignment, I could see it,
Yeah.
everything just falling into place. And it was the align, like I knew that we were doing grid work. I knew the morning we got up to arrive that night, I'm like, oh shit, there's something going down. I knew when we left and made the 3.5 hour, something's going down because we've done enough of it now. But I'm in my hometown. I'm driving by
Yeah.
where I got my first fight, where I kissed my first girl, where I got my first licks in school, all these different things coming back, right? And then the other thing that was interesting too, because there was really three primary residences that kind of anchored my life, right? One was my dad's parents, my grandparents, because they had a huge house, like in when they were, like I was telling Morgan, they were the first Mexicans in the white community, and they had this big lot that we went, and the address was 435 Clark, which is a 12. And then I went, I wonder what my address was where our first house was, where we spent all my years. It's 4017. It's a 12. And I wonder what my house was when I moved back when I was 23. And it was a 12. Everything was the first time I bought a rent house. I bought a triplex. What was the address? It was a 12. Everything was a 12. So everything was lining up, and it was very heartfelt for me. When I saw my son, I started crying. Okay, can you imagine a grown-ass 59-year-old man?
Of
His son
course.
walks in, and
Is it Ted? Crying. Was it Ted? Yeah, I saw that picture, and I was like, it was just, you didn't have to caption anything. There was so much beauty coming out of that photo because you can feel the ancestral lineage being cleaned out. Like all the trauma and the blockage that your family has gone through. I can feel the nodal points of you and your son coming together and just blowing that wide open. So I don't know if you noticed, but I think he had like 700 likes. And I don't know if it's because there's two cute guys in the photo, but most likely it's because everyone.
That one's my dad. Yeah, that one's my dad, Dante, who's the oldest than me. And then the second one was just me and Teddy. They both have several hundred. I mean, I don't know. I posted a lot of stuff over the years, and then I also watch other things. That's what I do, right? And but I noticed. Well, you know what? The bottom line is, it's like the truth frequency. You can't argue with it. Whatever it is, it's not about me. I'm just saying. So, and I do think that what you said is true too. Is that a lot of things don't have to be explained. Yeah, and here's the thing too. I'm crying, and Morgan's handing me a Kleenex, and my son sees my son hugs me, and then he pulls back, and he sees I'm crying. He hugs me again, which made me cry more. And then the lady who I never met. Yeah, is watching the whole thing, who's been hearing these horror stories about me. Now, she's a strong woman like Morgan, who's going to make up her own damn mind. Let's put it that way, right? Yeah. But Dante told me she wants to meet you because she's heard all these things about you, right? And, of course, she heard them from Dante's mom, who's my first wife, who ironically lived right up the street from where we were staying. So I told Morgan, on your morning walks, go that way. But yeah, so yeah, it was, there was so much, like even seeing, I saw my aunt, who I hadn't spoke to in many, many years, who's, we actually had a conversation. Morgan took a nap. Now this all happened in a pocket of time that big, right? Yeah. And so we had a conversation, and she just said to me something like, why didn't you ever tell anybody your side of the story? And I said, why? Why would I? Because
no one was ready.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, that old saying, you don't make excuses, don't tell stories, because your enemies won't believe them and your friends don't need to hear them because they're your friends, right? So there was a lot of stuff. Even there were some phone calls made and some things were said to me, but I was like, it's like, like Jay-Z, dust on your shoulder, right? I mean, dust off your shoulder. So it was very huge. And it wasn't just huge for Todd, and it wasn't just huge for Todd and Morgan, and it wasn't just huge for the lineage stuff that occurred, and that did occur energetically and will play out in the physical, will manifest in the physical for my family. My uncle ended up passing, and they had a funeral just this past 2 days ago that we couldn't go. And so it was bigger than that. It was. I knew there was something involved the Earth grid. I knew there was a bunch of galactic stuff going on, and so it was just like I said, everything was in alignment. We had no fear. We got along great, which we normally do anyway. I mean, we really, as time's gone on, it's almost it's just an aberration if anything happens between us. But we were in the most extreme conditions, all these different things happening, and I could just see it. My sensitivity went through the roof. My higher sensitivity went through the roof, and has continued to do that. I mean, and it's a different world now. I believe it's a different world, and I think that the biggest thing that happened, and I'm going to shut up, but the biggest thing that happened was we've been getting these downloads, which is primarily her channeling, right? When we go to bed, and then other things can happen. I get my stuff, she gets hers, but she pretty much is the lead in, and it was about it had to do with this whole thing, which has been going on for a while, of this. People talk about the Great Divide or the two Earths, right? Like, and I'm always going with people on the show, like, what is that? What does that look like? I mean, is it a physical separate? What is it? So it was, I think, the night before it came in, and I can't remember the exact words, but I remember when I received it, which was when we were taking the 3.5-hour jaunt around to get to the city, right? And I started to get it, and I started to hear, hey, you're not leaving 3D. It's more that you're going into, let's just call it the 5D or the new Earth or whatever, right? And you guys are not just walking into it, you're actually creating it and expanding it as you go. And we're going to show you some examples. Now, this is on the way to the hotel the first night. So in the hotel lobby with the night clerk, there was something went on, and with the convenience store clerk, and they showed me these two situations of how we would be going to these places, people that are listening, people like you would be, everywhere you would go, you would actually connect, and it would not be a coincidence with these certain people, because together you were lighting up the grid. And I was watching it happen, and I was watching Morgan and I, before it happened, go to these places and light up the grid. But it wasn't just us, it was others that came in. So like the situation with my kids and my cousin, this new energy just came in to fold. So it was almost like, if you use one of the boys or my nephews as an example, they got lit, and that light can't be turned off now. So they're now a beacon, right? So so that was really cool to actually experience that type of thing in that situation. It really was. I just drank too much sake. I've been okay.
So I think a lot of people that follow Soulogy and yourself and Morgan, your story resonates with them a lot. I think a lot of the viewers are going through trying to figure out. So our collective is going through huge changes, like so much massive change that the only way you can get out of it is going within. So a lot of cocooning themselves, instinctually cutting off energetic ties that have been siphoning and entangled. So everyone's kind of cleaning up their own energy sphere. And so what's happening, I feel, when I was observing the story going through, it doesn't surprise me in that way. Everybody has a different way of going through their changes. But for yourself, your biggest ancestral lineage is your huge family, right? Acceptance in your huge family. That doesn't happen for everybody. Some people just don't care about their family, and the value system is not there for it. But for you, it always has been. And being acknowledged and seen in your family is really important to you. even though you worked really hard to put up walls and say they're not important to you. So with the 5D, what's happening is the entanglement of your family lineage either has to cleanly cut, or you basically get disentangled. So in order for you to move forward, it looks like what you've done is you had to go through a door that actually led to your past. So sometimes to move forward, you got to go backwards, right? And a lot of people do understand that. So what I love, and your personality, you seem to attract a lot of dramatic physical events so that you can get it in your head that this is a huge learning lesson. Because if anything comes subtly to you, I think you notice it.
Well, it used to be that way. It used to be that way.
Yeah, no, but for you, it still is. And I think it's because you are a storyteller. You heal, activate a lot of people through your stories. So if your stories were mundane, like I opened the door and all of a sudden I'm a saint, no one's going to listen to you, right? So people love that dramatic story of yours. So when you went into Texas weather, whether or not the Texas weather was manufactured by forces, whatever it is, what I loved about it was that you were in the center storm of it while you were healing and blowing up your ancestral lineage, so you have no more energetic ties to them. You've officially stopped giving your family power, and what has happened is your family respected you out of it. And not only that, the younger generation, you activated their DNA, where they're like, hey, you know what? Our old story never resonated. We were just born into it, but here is an opportunity for a new story where we feel empowered by it. So you left a legacy with that as well. And the fact that your uncle passed just on the day that you chose to leave, right? I think that you guys were planning to leave and your uncle transitioned.
It was.
Yeah. So it was kind of like.
Yeah, it was. That's
yeah.
Right.
So it was officially where it was just the universe's energetic feedback of saying, well done. You know, here is one elder who basically held space for you, and he's freed from that now. So he can move on, he can carry whatever family density that went with him is now going to be transmuted back to the light, right? So it's just there was so much poetry, so much synchronicities in all of it. And it's just one of those things where it's just like, well, when you're stripped of things that you think was necessary, you have nothing to do but focus on what is like energetically in front of you, right? You don't have any other distractions. There is no distractions. Right. You have no power, no Wi-Fi. You just do you just be, I think, is the biggest one. It just forced everyone to be and go inside, because you can't really do anything else. There's no other distraction.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because my uncle, if you look at pictures of my uncle, and I resemble my dad, don't get me wrong, the Medinas have a very strong genes, and but I was 6'2", in a family of Mexicans. I think the tallest one would be about 5'11". I was very light complected, and some were very dark, some were hairy, some were not. We had a mixture of Indian and Mexican, but if you looked at my uncle, we looked alike, right? Like everyone said that our minds were alike, we looked alike. You know, his son said you guys had the same intelligence. I mean, and even when I lived there in my 20s, people would come up to me and say, "You're Arnold's son," and I'm like, "No, I'm Roland's son. I'm not Arnold's son." But we looked alike. And then the other interesting thing too is I used to have these lucid dreams, I still do, that occur in this house, this wood frame house, and the family comes. It's my dad's family, and and I've had like premonitions, like when my first child was born, I saw it was a girl. We didn't know. I wore a pink shirt that day because I got it in a lucid dream. And other births were like that. Just different things would happen. But one of the things I was told was, here are the next two people that are going to go. And so one of them was an aunt, and she went. And then it was my uncle, but my uncle went out of order. Well, his beloved passed 6 months before, 4 or 5 months before, and they were like best friends, literally best friends since they're like 4 years old, right? So that was interesting too, because everybody was conscious of that, which would not be deemed mainstream, right?
Yeah.
Everybody was talking about the spiritual aspect of things. And so that was another alignment too, I think. And then I think too, really like the him being the first of the seven kind of to something signifies something, and then the young people coming up too.
Yeah.
It was cool. Yeah, it was kind of cool. But yeah, it was interesting that not to be caught up in the narratives. And as I was asked by my aunt, why didn't you basically defend yourself? And I said, because why? I knew
Yeah.
then, I knew then, because that's when the whole thing started for me. It was like the universe would tell me, look, you know your truth, and I know your truth. Nothing else matters, right? Just go to work.
Yeah.
Go start Soulogy, go to work, go find that woman, whoever she is, and all that stuff, right? And so, yeah. And actually, the funny thing was, I talked to my aunt. The last thing she said to me is, she said, "You need to write a book." And of course, over the years, I've been told that, and over the years, I wanted to do that, but it was always because that's what you're supposed to do, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Anytime I would start it, I wouldn't be able to do it. And then about 3 weeks prior to this, it came in like, you're supposed to write a book. Actually, you're both supposed to write a book, and just start writing it, and then bring it to her and let her fill in, and then kind of like a back and forth thing. But I thought that was interesting. But there was a lot of synchronicities, validations, alignments, transition, activations, and it's I'm just I am like just totally mind blown excited. I'm absolutely just, for the last so even before I technically woke up, okay, beginning in 2009, every single year, even before I technically woke up, because I had my last real Kundalini experience around March, around this time in 2011, 10 years ago. Okay. I had a couple of my 20s. I shut it down, but about 2 months before I hit the streets, 2 months before everything turned upside down, I had this Kundalini experience in a nightclub. And so, you know, for some reason I'm getting emotional. Is it you?
Always me. Just so you guys know, I always make Todd cry.
Usually you have a writing crop in your hand when you do that. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. So, yeah. Anyway, so I don't know. I just a lot of things came back. A lot of visions I had in 2011, 2012, 2013. A lot of stuff came back, and it was a really big deal. It was a huge deal on a personal level, but also on a collective level. And I knew, and she knew, of course, that there was some stuff being handled collectively. And even in comments that I saw that people wrote, they would say, people that follow that kind of stuff, they would say they're down there doing the work, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever. But I just know that it was very fulfilling, and I'm really excited. Oh, I was going to tell you that since 2009, in the last 10 days of May, so the window is like, I don't really know exactly, say May 25th to June 1st or 2nd. Every single year, major shit would go down. And the first years, like 9, 10, 11, 12, they weren't good things. Todd goes to jail. Todd gets beat up by 3 guys.
Wow. they were significant things because you're a slow learner. So that's how the universe echoes those lessons. And as you get to wiser, it becomes a little bit more with grace and ease, right? So your last learning experience, you got beat up physically, but emotionally, you were open to all of that, right? So emotionally, there was a huge purging which you recognize now because you're a little bit wiser, less righteous, and humbled by all of that. I think the biggest thing is like when it comes to families, it gets really tricky. And I can't say I'm talking from a place of experience because my dad went through did. So our generation doesn't have to do that. So, but I've listened to the stories of my dad. My dad went through exactly what you were going through when it comes to that storyline. And once one person breaks that chain, the next generation has a totally different narrative to create. But trauma is not one of them, right? So you are clearing your generation of trauma. So your children can be like me and sit here and laugh at you and say, great job, Dad. But it's more empowering. Like the next generation is about multi-level creation versus your generation is about as more, because of the 3D experience, it's a little bit more singularity that has effect. But this next generation coming up, it's multi-level. Like, so it affects so many timelines, what they're creating, right? So one of the things that, looping back to you, is with the Texas weather, and I haven't had a lot of drain experiences since last year. Like literally a year has passed since I've had it. But one of the things that perked up for me is for you guys, you did have the Dragon Clan with you, so strong for you guys, and opposing elementals, which is in the dragon world is about its destruction and creation. Those are the strongest opposing energies in the dragon. So when you guys came in, it was beautiful, your normal Texas seasonal weather, quite warm, right? And then you blow in and you have like freaking ice storms that never happen. Whether or not it was manufactured or not, it doesn't matter. The dragons were there clearing.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. But there was so much clearing and purging, it wasn't even funny. So it's significance happening for the nation of the states for sure. There's something in Texas that required so much of that to happen for more creation to happen too, right? So it'll be interesting next little bit timeline happens, because you'll start to everyone will start to physically feel that effect of the Texas weather. And it'll play out in very different ways that I don't even think our brains can wrap our heads around. Like it's gonna unfold pretty quickly.
I agree. There's been a lot of talk about, and I just wanted to say this too, just to icing on the cake. So everything happened this last week, 7 to 10 days of May, as you get into June. And I was told in 2011 or 2012, I was told, okay, so 11, 12, 13, and 14 are going to be the dissension.
Yeah.
I was actually told that. And I understood that in 15, which is the year that I met Morgan, right, is when it went like that. And so we're actually end up having a Soulogy Fest on May 28th, 29th, 30th this year. So that fits that. So that's another alignment. And that occurred organically. But back to what you were saying about the states and the focus, and obviously so. It's understandable why there's so much focus on the U.S., the role it's played. We're talking energetics. We're talking about democracy. And we're talking about all this idealism and all this stuff, right? Well, Texas, and in particular South Texas, is a huge part of the United States history. Pivotal moments, seminal moments, particularly in South Texas. And so, Texas is the only state that's been a country. It was a republic. It has a right to secede like no other state does. I mean, but the element that, or the dynamics that created that whole element of energetic transformation was in the 1830s, and it involved multi-cultures: Black, Mexican, Indian, Anglo, Asian, and a lot of it occurred right there in these areas that I spent a lot of time in. And so I think that, for me, what you said is very, very true. And I think that a lot of things, just like in my family, it may not have happened. It may not have happened to the nth degree yet, but in the energetic field, much was brought to that 0 point, to that central point, to that neutrality. Things were brought into alignment. Past, present, and future all merged. And I think the same thing happened, to your point. And I think that's a reason why that area was kind of targeted, because there was only 2 cities in Texas that lost water, and only one that lost water for that period of time. So it's a big deal, no doubt.
Just keep laughing.
God. And it hasn't stopped. I don't know how long ago that was. How long ago was that? We've been back about a few days, about not even a week, and it hasn't stopped. Wednesday, Vera and Auguste came to town.
Oh, are they still there?
No, they left today. Okay.
Oh, they left. Okay.
So sure, Vera and Auguste. So Vera and Auguste are here. Now, this is another thing that's very strange. Okay. So I leave Houston October 13th, 2016, with nothing in my pocket. I left everything behind. I had an RV a used RV. I had a used truck, and I was going to hit the road and just give it hell, right? But I even left that behind because I had to disentangle from all that bullshit, and I just said, "F it, I'm out of here," right? Yeah. And so, what ended up happening was I called my soul sister, who lives in fucking Arkansas. I had an office in Arkansas, but I never went over the years. And so she lives in a little town called Van Buren, Arkansas. And this is October 2016. I stayed there till December the 13th, 2016. So then Morgan and I came back through here 3 or 4 times. We got friends. Our friend from Kansas, Beth Potts, moves over here. She lives a mile down the road. She lives in Van Buren, Arkansas. The next city over is Alma, Arkansas. And we've connected the first time I came with Aaron and Pam Pearson and their son Josh and their son Timothy. So this is all right. So then all of a sudden, Vera and Auguste are coming through town. And Vera said that on the way in, she started to get this huge feeling, like that type that almost makes you sick, right? Like when I was talking about the yellow dragon. For me, Morgan was out. I walked outside, and I'm big on the red tail hawks. And I haven't seen very many around here. Like maybe in the few months we've been here, I might have seen 2 or 3. I walk outside. I'm actually sitting in here, and this doesn't happen a lot because I'm not clairaudient that much unless it's a tone. And I hear this click, 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 click thing. And I got up out of the chair and I went over to this lamp and I'm looking around and I'm trying to where's this coming from? And I realized it was coming from outside. And I realized I was being called outside. So I walk outside and I look up and there's a red-tailed hawk right above my head. And then I look over there and there's another one on the other side of the house, right? Like the other side of the block. And I thought to myself, if I see one more, there's some major shit going down. Right. So I turned to the other side. It was a triad of hawks, But my point is, energetically speaking, we just went through, 4 or 5 days, 6 days of we got together 2 or 3 times, with Beth and the Pearsons, and a lot of code exchange, a lot of things that like you were talking about earlier, the picture with me and Teddy or me and Dante. There's no words needed. In fact, you can't even explain it anyway, right? Yeah. So there's a lot of that going on, and I think that also reflects what's happening overall. And the last thing I'm going to say is I think that there's a huge awake population, and when I say awake, I'm talking about people that are doing the work on themselves, and as a result of that, they're moving the energy into a higher level of alignment, doing stuff like, your dad did, or I guess what we did in Corpus, where, things are being cleared for the multidimensional contributors that these next generations are.
Yeah. No, I would say there is definitely, with the COVID, now this will probably be taken off air, the C, we'll call it the C, there is an element of this. There's an unpopular opinion And Julie Dahara Roberts and I always banter about it, but it is a good thing in the aspect that it will alter the DNA, whether, again, if it's manufactured or not. So what happens is if you are actively and with integrity working on your energetic field, you don't have to be woke, you don't have to be a light worker, you don't have to be all these labels. If you are just recognizing your own energetic field and understanding the implications and the ripple effect of your energetic field as a contributor to the collective, what happens with the C is it will clean up your DNA. So all the bullshit that no longer serves you, and that's different for everybody. I'm not going to say like, you know, depression, anxiety, all the labels, all the emotions that people usually throw out as calling it junk DNA. It's just experience. So all the experiences you know that no longer move you forward, that keep you stuck. So bliss and contentment and peace also keeps you stuck. The idea of stagnation has to go. So what's going to happen is all that coding, programming basically gets blown out with COVID, whether it's altered or not. What happens is when you're intentionally working with your own energy field, you can use the antagonist story of COVID and say, you know what, go ahead, alter my fucking DNA. Blow out all the shit that no longer moves me forward. And that's when humanity will shift in such a way that you can't deny it. I think that's what's going to happen. Because even I remember, I think a couple shows before, I left a comment about how there is a big chunk of the lightworker community that identify with the role of bridge building, which means that you sit neutral observation and you try to play neutral, right? Like you try to create space for acceptance for diverse points of view, and you try to create bridges so people can cross back and forth.
Yeah.
But not sure what happens, man. All those fucking bridges are blown out. there is no cross.
Like, that was a good comment.
I have been in deep mourning since December. Every day there's moments where I'm just like, what the hell? I would sit. I own a store, and so I'm usually, if it's quiet and then there's no other stimulation coming at me, like customers or clients or anything like that, I would have, and I'm not a crier, I would just have this overbearing sit there and cry for no good reason. Nothing has triggered me. Nothing is wrong. I just have this need to cry, and I couldn't recognize it. And then I think the last 2 days it occurred to me that I am mourning bridge burning process. I am mourning the process where we were allowed to intersect, because in the 3D world, there was intersections of different realities and people's perspectives.
I get what you're saying. There are no bridges. There are no bridges in the new earth.
There's no bridge. There's no intersection.
Right.
So then you're like, what happened? Like, so you start mourning relationships. You start mourning like ideologies that used to work for you. Like they're all gone. Where they went, I don't know why. Like I'm just observing.
I wonder if that's because for instance, today, you can't make this stuff up, man. So today is my oldest child's birthday, right? Who I haven't seen since Morgan influenced a meeting in her first visit in 2017. And she's my first, man. And for the first 5 years, that was my whole thing. I was pretty much a lot of the maternal role and paternal role. But anyway, today's her birthday. We sent out, just one message. Hey, you want to get together? And no answer, right? Which is cool. You respect everybody's path. We have no judgment. It's not a big deal. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about, these bridges, okay? Mm-hmm. So that's one of the things going away from the experience in South Texas was I knew I was we were all, and when I say we, I'm talking about much more than me and Morgan. I'm talking about the whole kit and caboodle, right? So we're actually creating and expanding the experience. It's not a place, it's something that we're all constructing. And so at the same time, I realized that probably won't see too many of those people again. Certainly there's some that I won't. And I even told Morgan, you know, I told her a couple of days ago, I said, you know, because my dad and I hadn't talked in 6 years. And, you know, and I told her, I said, I wonder, how do you feel about, you know, you asking my dad to come up for, you know, like 3-day weekend or something. And just us, you know, and not have all the other stuff going on, just so it happens one time or whatever. But anyway, so my point is that I can see what you're saying because, and it's okay, you know, we're all going to get to the same place or however you want to put it. But yeah, I can see these bridges that are, and yeah, it is kind of, it's like an ego death.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing, it's just one of those where the intersects don't happen anymore. The bridges aren't there for you to cross over freely.
Right.
And and if you get like a immediate energy feedback in the body, like some kind of medical issue happens to you. And I think that's what happened. That's what for just in December, I'm not sure what happened, but in December, I was out of commission for 2 weeks. Like I had, was diagnosed with diverticulitis and was heavy out.
Right.
So it's one of those things where I just had to be at peace of understanding energetic entanglement and letting go of all of that and being okay with it. Although I am still human. So of course I go through a mourning period of it, right? Where it's just like, this is so uncomfortable. You know, you don't like it. You know, your higher self is like, no, you'll land in about it. It's still a painful process for sure. So it's one of those things where it's just like the separation or perception of separation of timelines is so big now. I'm not sure if there's going to be an intersect. You're right. People you won't interact with them. And it's not because they died. You just don't interact with them at the level that you normally would.
Yeah. It's kind of like you put out, you know, God, and I don't mean this, I don't mean this towards anybody, but I mean, you put out a birthday greeting or a holiday greeting for 3, 4, 5 years unanswered. At some point you just go, hey, you know, but you know what I mean? I mean, it's just, it takes two. It takes two, right? But the other thing I forgot that it was diverticulitis that knocked you down, or at least that was the symptom, right? Or that was the identified affliction. So I look at that. I look at Greg Prescott. I look at some other friends of mine, and she's disappeared. And they all had these issues in that lower stomach area, beneath the stomach, the lower intestines. And I noticed that there seemed to be a correlation with what was happening collectively when you went through this, Greg went through this. I've had some other friends go through this, specifically in that area, right? Beneath the stomach, in the lower intestines. And that's what I was telling you this morning. I'm a little crabby this morning because I'm a little backed up. And I'm not like that. You know, I eat my oats, you know, and I mean, I'm like, you can set it, but something's been going on the last 10 days and my body's like screaming at me. I told Morgan this morning, I was like, I think this is me, right? The unconventional. I said, I think I'm going to have to fast. She said, well, go get me a milkshake before you start the fast, right? But seriously, I can feel something and my body's telling me, look, I'm not going to spell it out for you, but
exactly.
And I agree with what you said earlier. Everybody's different. I'm talking to Vera and Augusta yesterday evening, and I'm saying, man, have you guys been dehydrated like the last 3 days? Because that's the number one sign for me. And they're like, yeah, but we're not drinking water. We're drinking soda. You know, we down 2 liters of soda and this and that. So everybody's different. I get that. But I can tell my body is like trying to fit me into a slot or a lane. And there's some things and I guess I'm going to get there regardless, but it's trying to help me smooth out the ride. And I know Morgan had this going on. A couple of other friends of hers had this going on as well. But the other thing I wanted to mention before we get out of here, I want to make sure, you know, everything's been happening obviously faster and faster. It's a wider berth every day. But for me, the thing that's mind blowing is the sequential aspect, like the
Yeah.
way things happen. Like you're literally turning the page, and it looks unrelated, but it's so in that regard. After all this, or during all this, just a day or two ago, I'm laying on the couch, and I turned on YouTube. Morgan was doing a session, and that kid from Argentina on Gaia. Stefano Mateus or Matteo Stefano. I don't really know. I think it's Stefano Matteo Stefano, something like that. Anyway, this kid is pretty sharp, and he's connected, and he's got it, and he's very credible. And I don't live or die by anybody, but it was a really interesting 17-minute segment. And what he was talking about was how this was all constructed, how we were in the sixth dimension, how we had the forethought and everything of what we're going to do. The third dimension was created, and they went through all the sacred geometry and all this stuff, right? Which didn't interest me. What interested me was part of his presentation was in regard to how was the Galactic Federation formed, which again doesn't really appeal to me. But what they had to say about the human really was breathtaking, because what he said was that all the universal family representatives came together. It's Mateus de Stefano, thank you. And they said, okay, do we want to bring these mammals into the universal family? Do we want to bring them into this dimension or domain? And the majority of the votes were no. And the reason they were no was because we had something that was, first of all, they said they are so powerful. They're just like more powerful than any of us. And the thing that made them so powerful was their emotions, right? And so I was like, wow, like, and you hear stories about some species feed off our emotions for sustenance and other things like that. They even talked about it in this presentation, how we run some plant energy of planets that's siphoned off, not in a bad way, just this is how the universe works. But
yeah.
So eventually the answer was yes. We talked about how channeling was basically vibration from those aspects going through the dimensions coming to the person, right? So it was really interesting. But the big thing for me was, after going through all of this stuff, especially going out into this grocery market, into the streets in Corpus Christi during this catastrophic event, and and Morgan and I going, wow, everybody's just moving right through this thing. There was something going on. You could see the transformation. And like you said, to your point, which I think is a great point, they aren't light workers. They're just normal people. We're just normal people. We're the ones that say we're something that they're not, right? But yeah, I think that this is part of it. And the reason I brought this up is because Morgan has ever since I met her, she has always said nothing matters until you embody it. I've also understood that she came from kind of a galactic, trajectory, and I came from an organic trajectory. So there's things that as a human are pretty easy for me, and vice versa, right? So as these two, are converging, one of the things that I've noticed is how she processes and integrates events and situations and interactions. And what I've watched is the potency of somebody who allows their emotions and doesn't push them away. And I guess what I'm saying is, I'm getting to the point now where I'm starting to understand that you take it all in, that the emotions are the power.
Yeah,
But they can either be unbridled or they can be respected, loved, and nurtured, right? So like when I got on with you, I tell this story. It's a shitty story. I'm in a shitty mood, and I tell it, and it dissipates, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not pushing it away. I'm not saying I'm not my friend, or I'm not this, or I'm not that. I'm just going, I feel like crap, And I think that really has something to do with maximizing the potential of our transformational abilities, because it fully involves the human, and not only that, it involves the unique aspect of the human, which is what we're bringing to the universal table.
Yeah.
Something like
that. So I want to go back to
mm-hmm.
the lower area of your body and everyone having like abdominal gut region issues. So one of the downloads I got is the true power of humans is the creation in the womb area. So that one of the things that's happening is if you live your entire life, everyone has different signature abilities and energetic outputs, right? But if you are one of people like myself who identify as being creative, like I've always put out creative writing, creative drawings, even in my current career, I'm an interior designer, so I work with 3D spacing and all that. The creativity is being changed. The formation of how we create is being changed. So I find that when I start doing the things I normally do to excess out my energy, because the biggest thing about body work is you're two types of energy systems. The first one is you take in excess energy and you run it. The second one is you output excess energy and you have to, and they work in tandem. That's why you usually choose partners that take your excess energy or vice versa to help you ground and be optimal systems, right? So we're just talking strictly energy. There's no biblical, religious, elemental to it. It's just strictly energy. I find my past behavior of creation gives me pain, like abdominal pain. So it's really strange. And I don't know if it's because there's a next level of creation that comes in. So my go-to of like drawing, painting, writing, speaking, because I also obviously I do a lot of speaking as well. It doesn't bring me the same level of satisfaction. I don't feel fulfilled. And sometimes if I get a little bit off kilter, like the entire last year, I created from a point of like in my career as an interior designer, I slammed out so many projects. Also in my store, I slammed out so many like merchandising. It accumulated into this event where it basically shut me down for 2 weeks.
Right.
And this started off really slow. Like I didn't take on anything. I postponed it. I manifested so that my projects were lighter work. And I have not been in pain since that. So I think the creation part of energy is changing into something different. So if you are a creator, for me anyways, I find that if I just sit and redirect my energy back to nature, right now, that seems to be the most ease and grace thing to do. If I try to create out with that excess energy, it blows up in my face.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I have two examples. One is my friend Jade Lyons over at Vibrational Empowerment Network, who we've since the day we met, which was my last day in Sedona, the first time I went to Sedona for a few weeks, and his first day in Sedona, where he came from Chicago with nothing but a suitcase. We've always done these spontaneous collaborations. So he hit us up a month ago and said, hey, listen, how do you feel about us facilitating the first Soulogy Fest? So I'm like, okay, we're on, right? But when I was talking to him, so he's put on festivals his whole life and all this stuff, right? When he got to Sedona, he put one on last year that was incredible. I'm sorry, it would have been late 2019, before COVID. He put on this incredible festival, 200 presenters and performers, had no money whatsoever. I was there 3 days before it started. He needed $10,000 just to put a deposit down, just to make it happen. He didn't have it, and it's this amazing story. Somebody is walking in and knows somebody, and they write him a check the day before. They have to have it. So this is the kind of energy this guy is. Anyway, he had to resort to online virtual events all of last year. So he comes into December and he's trying to figure, he's getting amped up, and he's in that same mode you're talking about, utilizing these, lack of a better word, these old methods, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And he gets shut down for 3 weeks. He can't even get out of his bed,
Yeah.
and he got the same message you got. And I also see it happening too, because when he approached us and we went on the trip, and and we're like, okay, what are we going to do? Because I said to him, okay, so we're just going to supply everything, and then the schedule and all that. You'll work that out. The music, the stage, yeah. So I said to Morgan, because so many times I've approached Soulogy expansion and it's blown up. In fact, every time, right? Pretty much until you just let go and let it flow, right? Which isn't an easy thing because I don't know how to do it. Nobody to my knowledge knows how to do it. We're figuring this shit out, right? So I told Morgan, I said, well, why don't we? She actually is the one that brought it up because it was just like, okay, we're going to do it. And I said, okay, are you okay with it? Yes. And then she's like, okay, well, I'd be interested to see what y'all are going to do. I said, no. This is about it. We need to put this on right. Like, it's got to be feminine representation. It's got to be this new energy. It can't be the old stuff, right? She's like, yeah. So we ended up coming up with this thing where we'll have this 6, 7, 8 people with equal representation. It's actually going to make decisions by majority vote, right? So to me, this is a totally new thing, a leadership by consensus. Now, I'm not saying this is the end-all cure-all. What I'm trying to say is this is the other side of it. I can see us walking into this year, like you're probably already experiencing it, and we're utilizing a more balanced field to implement and initiate and create and manifest things that we've never done before. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I got to ask you something, though. I got to ask you about something because you might know what it is. So we're laying in bed. We obviously have these mergings that just, I can't even talk about the last week. I mean, I'm looking down to see if I'm wearing a bra. I don't know what's happening.
Oh, yes. You guys are quite infinite mergings.
Yeah, it's it. But so what happened was we laid down about 5 days ago. We laid down. There wasn't going to be much going on. In fact, we barely put our hands together. I'm already on my side. We're tired. It's been a long trip, right? We had just got back. So I noticed she starts putting her hand on my back, like she's feeling me to see if I'm there or something. I'm like, what are you doing? Well, what was happening in her mind, she was moving, but it was my body moving. So she was putting her hand on me to differentiate her body from my body. I didn't know it till the next day she told me. But that was what was happening. Now we've had mergings, and I've been Morgan, and but not where it's actually becoming a physical thing. So it was in her mind. She could feel her body moving, but it was my body she was feeling because my body was the one moving. So I don't know, what is that all about? What do you think?
Huh?
WTF?
Well, there are stories out there where basically two souls that have been intertwined that tight, you can manipulate another person's body. So it's one of those things where that doesn't surprise me if you guys are at that point in your energetic work where you can manipulate each other. That's what she's doing. When she's moving, she's testing she can move your hand, right? It's actually not her hand on you. She's trying to manipulate your hand. So that doesn't surprise me because I know when I first met you guys, a little bit of a backstory. When did we meet? Like 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
We met in 2018 around October, something like that.
So one of my things is there are certain people that I am guided to be friends with, like not in a creepy stalker way, although sometimes but there's some people that come in my field and I'm directed to support you. And I have no idea what that support looks like. There's just some people, and sometimes it's for a short period, sometimes it's for a long period. But for sure, when Morgan and you came into the field, I've known of you for a while. I think because I watched Soulogy for quite a couple years now. But it was only when Morgan became I call you guys Torgan. It's only when you guys united and got married, then you guys lit up in my field as a significant couple that will be kind of, and you're significant not because in a special way, you're significant because you guys chose to be in the spotlight. I'm not saying that you guys are huge, but you chose to share your story so other people can not feel alone. So that's where the significance is. So one of the things 2 or 3 years ago that I saw, what made you guys stood out for me from other couples, there are other couples as well, and was that your ability to merge to the point where I can't see you guys anymore. Like I can't differentiate who is who. So it doesn't surprise me that you guys are at the point where one can manipulate another person's physical form. And you know what? In the Vietnamese culture, that's pretty normal too. And so I know, with your viewers, there's a pretty hard line about physicality and spirituality. Vietnamese culture, when you are with a person to that level, and it doesn't have to be the other unique thing is you guys are in a intimate relationship. There's not all souls operate that way, right?
Yeah.
But in the Vietnamese culture, you can actually, it's not possession per se, but you can actually jump into, because through consent, possession is when it's not through consent. You can jump into the other person's body because your frequency is so similar that the other person's body is not going to reject you. So then you can basically see everything through their eyes. It's like, I know in the native culture, they call them skinwalkers too. So some people do have the ability to jump in other physical forms to do that. So like I said, that doesn't surprise me. What you guys are.
And the way I look at this, the way I look at our situation, I can't speak for other couples, and I agree with everything you said. It doesn't have to be a romantic situation to happen. But as I see it, as the potential, what's available, and we're fulfilling certain, or we're beginning to fulfill certain potentials that haven't been in play for a while, as many other people are. So it's not really about the couple. It's about there. It is, as the individual goes, as the couple goes, so goes the collective kind of thing. But what I'm getting at is, I think that for me, what I've noticed over the last few weeks, and I brought it up a couple of times on shows, like somebody would be telling me a story on the show. They'd say, "There's Bob is here and Susie's here and I was here and we were talking and da 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 da," and the next thing you know, I'm there, like I'm listening to them. And I many times see the higher self and I get whatever messages or whatever, but I'm actually there, like in that moment. Now, I'm not Bob or Bill or the guest or Sue or whatever. I'm actually the entire field. Like if that field of that situation or event was of one body, I'm that body. And I'm like, this happened like 2 or 3 times. And it happened in about a week. And I'd say this was about 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. But it was the same type of thing. I was like, because I wasn't trying to be there, it just happened. Like it was okay. I wasn't possessing anyone, and that was the that was the difference though. Like if I want to go sit in someone's space, I can do that. We know that we all can do that, But this is a situation where I was being told a story. And the next thing you know, kind of like what happened the other night with Morgan, that wasn't something she tried to do. It just happened, right? It felt like my body's moving, but in her mind, it's her moving, So, I mean, so there's not, I've been saying too for the last month that, and it's just my own opinion, but like whatever the level of distortion will be, we have no idea. Nobody can comprehend it. Nobody knows. But by the same token, whatever the level of skills and abilities and higher sensitivities that come online, what we're able to do with that, nobody knows. And it's beyond our comprehension. But I feel like that's the overriding factor is this new way of you running your business or this new way of doing a festival or we're just applying what we've come into. And as a result of that, nothing old works.
It just does. But the funny thing is, it's not a new form, right? It's just an occult form. It hasn't been discussed in mainstream media at all. It's usually reserved to very specialized groups that hold that knowledge under secrecy because the current world can't handle that level, right? There's going to create a lot of chaos if that ability is unleashed. But yeah, in when it comes to martial arts training, it doesn't matter what discipline you're in, you have the ability to jump in another person's skin depending on what level you're at. And a lot of the, for example, a lot of the students and sensei mentorship, most of the senseis can actually get to that level where they can jump in a student's body and manipulate their body to create a certain outcome that's usually in battle mode, right? So it's one of those special abilities that is pretty normal in the Asian culture.
No, I agree. I agree with you. It just hasn't been mainstream.
Yeah, it's not mainstream.
It has been. It's just been unique to certain specific disciplines. I get that, and those who might secret the esoteric stuff, the esoteric knowledge. But I remember too. This came up in the last week or so in regard to telepathy, which you could throw telepathy in with intuition and into what you're talking about, the skin walker type of thing. And that is, I remember having this show back in the early Soulogy days, like 3 years ago, or early SoulSpeak 5D days, so like episode 400 or something. Angie Parker was on, our sister from Oregon, and that was the first time that we brought up telepathy and really started to talk about it and acknowledge it. Hey, are you feeling this? Yeah. But she said something in that show that always stuck with me. She said, yeah, it's here, but with it comes a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
And I think I think that's another part of what we're creating or stepping back into and then remixing, with the potential of remixing and expanding is, of course, the intention has to be pure, because if it's founded on duality at all, it's going to crumble. It's not going to work. Okay. Morgan and I have been talking about this, and she pointed this out to me in regard to Soulogy a long time ago. Todd, if any part of it is anchored in duality, it's going to crumble, or that part of it's going to crumble. So as we're going through this, I realized, we were talking this last week, I said, you cannot function in duality without being duplicitous. There's a duplicity thing that occurs, like I say one thing, do another thing. I think one thing, do another thing. Or somebody makes an overture to me and I second naturedly do something back, which is not even in alignment with myself. So that whole part of it, I think, is going away as well as we go through these surrenders or deaths, like you're talking about with the bridges or the ego deaths. As we let go of this stuff, this is what I'm getting at really, is that now we're starting to actually reap the rewards, the fruits of our labor. And I don't think anyone knows what that's going to look like, but to me, I'm really excited about it. What?
Yeah, I mean, I right now I would like to say I'm excited, but I feel like I'm a little bit nervous, if I have to be honest. I have to be honest. It's nerve-wracking, and only because I have so many attachments personally, and I recognize that, right?
Yeah.
I am totally envious of yourself and Morgan, because you guys have worked through all your attachments, and the last attachment is really each other. Yeah. Which you guys have kind of gracefully said, if that's what it comes to, then that's what it comes to, right? So I have a lot more to lose and mourn and be in pain and be uncomfortable with than you. But I do enjoy paying attention to you two, because you have nothing to lose at this point. Like, you've worked it up to this point where you have nothing to lose. And that is the greatest light blazing heart, is when you have nothing to lose, right? Yeah. When you have everything to lose, I'm most likely not going to get to that level unless I'm willing to do that. But right now I'm not, and that's okay too. There's a lot of people.
That's okay. That's absolutely okay.
That's okay too. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, everyone has a personal journey, but like I said, it's so entertaining watching you and Morgan.
Well, we made some choices too, which again would be like a representation of the energetic, like with choices. We get together and I had helped raise 6 kids. She raised 2, and we're like, okay, well, obviously we're not having any kids in the house and no grandkids. We're not having any pets.
Yeah.
Not even a goldfish, right? Like, so that's something that we chose, not because we're assholes, but because, look, this is a full-time job. We're kind of trying to find alignment with our relationship, with our missions and ourselves. And
Yeah.
So I think that, and then the other thing I think that's important with what you said, first of all, I think that that's a type of honesty that we got to have with ourselves, you know, and that's just been my experience. I used to call it the brutal honesty of the soul, you know, it's hard
Yeah.
on the human, beautiful to the soul. But I think the other thing is, like, even if I look at some of the relationships I've had with contemporaries that are friends, because everybody's my friend, and so people I collaborate with are my friend, or even with my family, like what just happened. There's some that are I'm sitting there watching it, that are choosing to remain in this space, like this is far as I can go, kind of
Yeah.
thing. And over here you have this other element, and there's nothing wrong, truly nothing wrong with either one of them. They're both
Nope.
just different sandbox, and so you say, where do I want to play? That's it. It's not a big deal. And you can see, like, that really happened with the family thing, because there was a couple of there was a couple of individuals who made it very clear, actually more than a couple, but that made it very clear, uh, good to see you, but you stand over there, you know.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
over there, and that's okay, because this is and look, we can't see the other side of this thing. If we could see the whole thing, the whole yin yang, you know, we would probably see, and I'm sure that we would see the importance and the significance and the invaluability of whatever they're doing, no matter what it looks like on the surface, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So
And
so
then there's also a time and place for everything, right? Like I said, you and Morgan, you have raised your family to the
yeah,
point where the natural parenting part of your job, like all the hard work, has already been done. So
yeah,
this segment and chapter of your life truly is about you. Like everyone has certain natural segments that are hyper focused on just what you want and what your heart desires are. And then there's natural segments of the human life where you run support for other people, and that is important too. So for anyone that's listening, because I find in this community there's a lot of extreme personalities where it's just like, fuck the system, I'm going off grid. They're into
I know.
composting toilets and all these things that I have no
Yeah,
idea,
yeah,
because
I
I
had that
am a
conversation this
lecturing
weekend.
princess. So it's one of those things where I can't identify with the art of compost toilets. I'm like, why on earth would
No,
you do composting toilets?
I told Vera Augusti this weekend, I'm up for anything, but as long as there's indoor plumbing. I don't do that shit. I did it too many times before, I guess. I don't know. I'm not doing it.
Well, that's the irony is my parents grew up without all of that, and they
Yeah,
don't understand that either, right? So some people go very extreme because they need all of that taken away
yeah,
for them to feel so uncomfortable, so
yeah,
they can recognize the true value of who they are and
yeah,
what fulfills their life. I get it. I right now in my life at this moment, I am not one of those people, but I am happy to run support for those that I'm like, hey, those people are going to bring the collective to that magic point of, like, where big shit's going to happen, and I'm happy to run support from the comfort of my
No
toilet
pun, no
and
pun
running
intended.
water.
No pun intended. Big shit's gonna happen.
So it's one
Uh,
of those things where it's just, you can still find fulfillment in the everyday thing, right? Of course,
yeah,
if you're miserable, it's a little bit different. If you're
but
miserable,
you're right. There are things,
situation
yeah,
for sure.
that are. I always say, as it was explained to me on the street, it was explained to me, every single thing will be taken away from you if necessary.
Yeah,
Now, I really believe that that was a message meant for me. From that was meant from my higher self to me. But there is some truth to it in terms of attachments and what we resist and all that stuff. But I do think that we're in a space now where, um, okay, so like you brought up the thing about people going off social media, off the grid, right? They
yes,
make these absolute lines in the sand, and I had quite a few people hit me up, say a month ago around the David Icke thing. You know, we got shut down for a little bit and all that. And I just knew that, hey, I'm not going to move. I'm going to work with the energy in front of me, because I'm watching other people do it, and transform where I'm at, instead of cutting off a part of the universe, because it's going to come back to see me later if I do that, right? Kind of thing. And I just had a conversation with somebody that by email, that everybody knows, that's been off social media, and I was told I ain't coming back, and I'm like, okay, cool. But I see it as, what do I have in front of me? Can I integrate and bring equilibrium, and can I work with this energy and apply, my skill, your skill, our skills as transformers to the situation, as opposed to going over here and starting over. I like to dig in the hills, and that includes even like what you're talking about. I'm running a business. I'm running a family. This is my energy field. I've got my extended family, my business, my social network, and I'm going to stay here, and I'm going to work with this. I'm not going to start divorcing things out of my life and call it spiritual enlightenment. I just feel like that we're supposed to work with what we have, and I'm watching people do it all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, I get it. For some people, they need that experience, and that's cool. That's totally cool. In this time and place, I don't need that experience unless it pushes.
I'm not pooping outside.
But I'm not going to go out and create that experience. I'm going to sit here and see how that goes. But we're also here to be human, right? Like there is a little bit of an arrogance when it comes to our community where they ignore the human aspect. So just to wrap it up, because I do need to wrap it up, at the top of the show, you started with a short story of how you don't like people, like your friend didn't like people. At the end of the day, we are people. You know what I mean? That's what we're here for, the human experience. We're here we're here to be flawed. We're here to laugh at ourselves. We're here to connect with other people, to laugh with, you know what I mean? And to share your stories and to have some resonance. We're actually here for this human experience. So although sometimes the human experience is very painful and you do need to compartmentalize yourself and find something bigger than yourself to give meaning to it, we are here to be human, and there's nothing wrong with that. But
no, I'm one of the biggest advocates of that. I don't even know why, but I will go back to that thing that Matthias Stefano that I watched, and so the message was first of all an acknowledgement of the power of the human being.
Yes.
Right. The energetic power, which, as the ETs I once read said, they're those who don't know their gods. And then the second thing being well, as I watch everything in the work that I do, it's the human part of us that is the most activating and that shares the most code. That's why I would rather have a conversation like this. I would put up a conversation like this against like if there was a worldwide contest, who can come out with the biggest code sharing, the biggest uplifting experience, enlightenment experience, whatever. I would put something like this on the table, and have a conversation with somebody, and you can talk about anything, because the truth frequency is the truth frequency. It's just being real, and like you said, it's most of all, it's the alignment and acceptance of this aspect of ourselves that we try to get rid of for so long.
Yeah, I mean, there's just quickly, I saw Shanine she actually popped out.
Where's she?
And she was saying that for her now moment, she has chosen to just be in the beauty of being a mom, and that's it. Just her little one, and that is a powerful human experience. If you talk to any moms, they will say that there's a moment. Not all mothering moments are worth the experience, trust me, but there are some where your heart just expands to a level that drowns out all the noise around you, and it really centers you, and you realize this is what you're here for, right? So that great job, Shanine. Just stay in that moment. Those moments shift. That's the other thing about human experiences. Nothing is forever, right? Yeah. So we're so finicky. We get bored of that mothering moment. So we need some shitstorm to appreciate it. And that's just how it is. That's part of the human experience.
Yeah, there's nothing like a kid's, I had one of my kids do this projectile deprecation on the walls.
Oh, yeah.
Like a machine gun. Thank God. Thank God I wasn't standing there.
But we should wrap it up.
Yeah.
One thing, did you want to? So one of the things that you're working on, I just want to punctuate out and end the show, is Soulogy Fest.
Yeah.
So what are you pre-planning without using the old modalities of pre-planning?
Right now, yeah. So right now we put together a group that I'm going to reach out to today. You know, you're one of them, and of course me and Morgan and I believe 5 other people. And so we're going to meet, and I personally have some stuff, you know, kind of written down in mind that just as a starting point, not to push my agenda, because everything's going to be done by majority decision, and we're going to walk the talk, right? But my idea, and I think everybody's the few that I've talked to are pretty much in line with it, which is not to have a typical retreat or seminar type or conference type of experience, but to have a fast moving type of experience where, let's say there's 20 hours there, you know, let's say 4 hours of like a mixer kind of energy where people are just mingling with each other, having a drink, whatever the case is.
Yeah.
And then out of the other 20 hours, you might have half that time where you have a traditional 1 hour presentation of somebody speaking about a specific thing. But as soon as it stops, the mood, the pace changes, and somebody comes on with some music, or somebody comes on. It's just boom, 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 boom. And then the other thing, to kind of emulate multidimensionality or multi experience, is to have at times, I'd say maybe a third to a half of the time, you have two to three things going on at once, and they can choose what they want to participate in. There's nothing they have to do. They can choose what they want to do. So
yeah.
There is on the spot that we're going to have it at. It's a guy from Australia, a very interesting guy, and his beautiful bride, and they have a baby. I've been there, was there last time, and he's got, I don't know, 3 acres. He's got a sweat lodge. He's got this kind of teepee. He's got this other thing that's, you know, like out of the desert, you know, or I don't really know what it is, but so there's plenty of space, plenty of room. And then the main tent for people, you know, for us to all have a multi, you know, like a multi offering. So, yeah, so that's just, and again, this is all going to be put before the panel or the council, whatever you want to call it, so we can make a choice by majority decision, period. So we can walk the talk, because I really feel like that's important. Yeah. But we'll be putting information out on this pretty quick. I think probably within the next 2 weeks. It will be in Sedona, by the way. It's in Sedona.
Okay, so that's your teaser for everyone that's paying attention to it. More details will come out a little bit more formally. The goal is to, I believe your goal, whether you said it out loud or not, it's a gathering for activation of codes. And that's really important. I think you cannot dismiss the magic that happens when you're physically in the space with other people. And I can actually attest to that, because here in my little world, I've held gatherings at the store with different people, and it has literally changed your coding. Like whether you like it or not, it's just kind of like a fast track opportunity for you to deactivate codes that no longer serve you and pick up codes that are going to accelerate your spiritual experience. I'm just going to put it like that, because there's no ascension or a descension or anything that just allow you to live a little bit more of a fulfilled life, because it's a space of a lot of like-minded people. It's a safe space. There are going to be people there that have walked a little bit further in their path, and you can use them as mentors, not gurus on pedestals, because there are flawed humans, especially Todd. But it's one of those where we all walk this journey together, and that's what the experience is. It's not like someone is going to do the heavy lifting for you. That programming no longer works. You still have to do and be intentional in your own journey.
Damn, I don't know why you asked me to do it. You should have done it. You just knocked me on the head.
Thank you so much for everyone that has watched Todd's horrifically, beautifully, gorgeous, messy story about Texas. Thank you, Morgan, for holding space for Todd while his life unraveled. She was a great, what do you call it, mirror for that. Great anchor. And I mean, yeah, it's hilarious to watch from the side. And if this resonates with you, Todd will always drop the link, and there's a PayPal link that you can contribute to it. So if he's stuck in another shitstorm, he can actually pay his hotel bill. That would be lovely.
I got to tell you that honestly, and we didn't ask, and we weren't broadcasting that much, but honestly, people,
Yeah.
We got home with $106.
Yeah.
And we actually, the community just stepped up. We got exactly what we needed to get home, and I just want to say, yeah, thank you, and thank you for coming back into the circus tent. Good to have you back. I'll hit you up later today.
All right.
What we talked about. Love you. Best to you and your family.